Well met, everyone. I am Rich the Lich, and today I am doing a spotlight on Artifacts of the Old World. This is a 91-page PDF that you can download now on DM's Guild for $12.95. I am very grateful and fortunate that Nico reached out to me via email, and he said that he, who is the project lead, and all of the contributors, the writers and editors that are involved in this, may benefit from sort of my take on this. He wanted me to take a look at this, so I did not have to pay for this copy. It was sent to me, but this and everything I'll be talking through today is what you'll get for $12.95. At the end of it all, I just simply hope to better inform you and help you make a better decision as to whether or not this might be something that's a good fit for you and your gaming group. Let's jump into it. We have a collection of artifacts inspired by European folklore for 5e D&D. Though it says artifacts, we're basically looking at kind of the back of the DMG, a bunch of magic items, all sorts of things, weapons and shields, armor. He's holding that gem thing, I think that's in there. Stuff like that, trinkets, baubles, that run the range all the way from common, of course, to uncommon, rare, very rare, legendary. So though it says a collection of artifacts, and though there are, I think, 10, 11 artifacts in here, of the 130-ish items, it runs the full range. So it's not all artifact level stuff. But running the full range allows it to be included into many different game types. As I said, there's so much diverse stuff here. There's so much diversity in the things that if you're kind of getting tired of all of the weapons and armor, because that's the cool stuff, there's some other things here that may be of value to you that kind of spark some inspiration that you can use. And because you've got uncommon things and you have artifact things, they may help and fit within all tiers of gameplay. So let's just see kind of what's what here. I'm going to read this paragraph to you to kind of give you the gist of what they're going for. This book was created by a multinational team of writers, artists, and editors, originating from nearly a dozen different European countries. Always making sure your record is on. With this project, they hope to share a bit of their country's history, lore, and mythology with you for use in the world's greatest role-playing game. As I said, project lead is Nicholas. Here's all of the writers and editors involved. A lot of people involved in this. There's the table of contents. You've got, I think, there may be a few numbers off, but I think there's about 130 items here of all different types. Okay. And they're broken up further into sort of those countries and the regions, real life stuff, mythology. You've got some Baltic artifacts or magic items, Norse, English and Welsh, Germanic, Irish, Greek, Italian, and Slavic. Okay. There's many things here that are going to be certainly familiar to you. Mjolnir. We can assume it's probably some sort of a hammer. It's probably going to be legendary or above. You have Artemis's bow, Achilles' armor, Aphrodite's dove, Zeus's thunderbolt. Some things that are very familiar to us, but yet you may have a lot of things, especially to me, that I didn't know anything about. So there's a certain level of excitement coming into this, especially given what they sort of are intending to do or promising, which is having people that grew up knowing about the lore and history of these things. It's from the region that they've lived in, that they're from. That brings about a certain level of authenticity to it, because that's kind of indicative of some of their culture and the way people live and breathe. And if you can take that and the stories of that stuff, and this is real world stuff, mythology or not, I mean, I'm not talking about fact versus faith or anything like this. You can Google this stuff. You can Wikipedia this stuff and you'll find more about it. So that's another plus in regards to the content, simply because if I'm inspired and that seed has been planted, I know that I can go elsewhere to get more information, to kind of go down that rabbit hole and learn more about it. And now you take it and you start to quantify it and try and wrangle it all in together from a player perspective, from a fan of the game of Dungeons & Dragons, and they start putting some mechanical bits to it. It seems like there's some pretty cool stuff here, okay? Now, if there was any hiccup at all, I will talk very briefly about the layout of this thing. I think you've already seen, I'm really high on the content here, and it's awesome, and it's worth your money. Go out and get this. It's worth it. So the layout stuff is not our make or break, but I'm just hoping to help others out there. Try and work in blocks. The mind, when we go through a page, thinks in blocks. This is a block. This hat is a block. This is a block. The blocks are often delineated and separated because of things like the use of font. You have a different color font and it's much larger. It kind of indicates to us that we're looking at a next section. There's a reason why wizards, and likewise here, you've got these lines under here, underneath where it says whatever the name of that is, the hat. you have a line. There's all these little delineating factors and separators, and they create boxes. Try and have your single thought flow from one box to the next like a flow chart. And then within that flow chart, so if the hat takes, in this case, 3 boxes, you have a box, which is where the lore is. You have a box for the art, and then you have a box for the stat block on what the hat does. You have 3 boxes. Do whatever you can as well to not only have those flow one after the other, try and have all those boxes on the same page. Because there's always this sort of tendency in our mind, imagine there's an imaginary book. Once we finish the thought of the hat, we close that book and we're ready to open a new book. And what I mean by that is, notice there's a box on the lore of the ring. There's a box on the picture of the ring. And then we're going to flow to the next box, which would assume to be the stat block. But already I'm going to have to jump to another page. Boom, I jump to another page. There's the box for the stat block. But notice, because we typically see things and our eye moves like a snake through a page, top to bottom, left to right, across columns. The very first thing here is the box of this artwork, which, because of art, because of color, because of it being a picture, which is a separator from all the words, our eye commits to something that's here, which is the rainbow belt. And it makes me want to find familiar. Rainbow belt. There it is, because it's so bold, I see it. And I start looking through this box. Meanwhile, my mind is still trying to gather information from these 2 previous boxes. So you can see how that flows a little weird. Here's one more quick example. We have a really large box of information about the lore of this longsword. Here's the stat block for it. But because of the flow, the next box that follows after this longsword's lore is this box, which is literally in a box, so it really separates. And this has to do with the thing at the bottom, which is not the longsword. If I want to continue this sentence, other times they will die a heroic death by a dragon's, I'm forced into this little mini box here. So you can see how the flow, when you take that and you bring that about over 80, 90 pages, that's the layout hiccup. So consider that. Let's look at the content itself. I can't go over everything. I mean, there's 130 items. As I said, you see on screen, there's diversity in rarities. So it gives us a lot to work with in how easy something might be to obtain, how costly something is, what might be level appropriate. Now, on the level of rarity and things like this and what the powers are, I can't speak to the balance of this thing. There's so much that's subjective when we're dealing with magic items, because even in official content, let's assume for a moment that we have resist fire rings and resist fire gear in the back of the DMG. What is that stuff? Uncommon, maybe rare? But if you're a dungeon master that's creating a campaign entirely based around fire and world-ending volcanoes and demonic invasions, and you've got those elements to contest with, you're trying to present a level of challenge and difficulty and tension to your group because of the ever-present threat of just the atmosphere, right? What is Boromir's, the very air is a poisonous fume, right? That's an obstacle that must be overcome. So you need to change, even though that's what's written, you need to change the rarity and the ease at which you can obtain resist fire gear and resist fire rings, because otherwise you mitigate the main factor, the main theme and threat of your world. You should be able to still work your way through this stuff, regardless of how balanced is it. What you might expect to be legendary and above probably is, right? The iconic Greek mythology type of things. Okay, so you have all that sorts of stuff that run the gamut. I think there's 2 commons, and then there's a bunch of uncommons, rares, very rares. There's like 30 legendaries and almost a dozen artifacts. So you're looking at 40 things that easily fit within the highest tier of gameplay, level 14, 15 and up. Really powerful stuff with a lot of moving parts. Obviously, I can't go through all this stuff. The greatest compliment I can give related to the content that's here, I always look at 2 factors. Does it inspire me? Now, it may inspire me specific to the game, so because I read about that, I now want to create an NPC to use this item. Because there's a cool axe that is something in Norse mythology, I now want to give that to the barbarian chieftain of the northern Viking tribes. Therefore, I want to create that NPC. And then I need to give him a place to live. So now that inspires me and plants the seed of me creating additional content. Now I need to create the place where those guys are from. Sometimes it inspires outside of the game and it just makes me want to start writing my own magic item book. So content can be inspirational because of the amount of lore, because of the amount of story, and most importantly, because of the amount of detail that is being given by those that are from that area. There is a certain level of authenticity and passion and respect that I can give that because they're sharing their culture with me. And that's inspiring to me. Literally, as you read through these things, there are many times where I'm sitting there saying, oh, who wields that sword? That's a really good idea. And the fact that you can go to Wikipedia and you can go to Google and learn more and keep going down that hole, there's just no end to the amount of seeds that are planted. So there's a plus on that aspect of content. As I said, when we deal with the balancing aspect of it, I already gave you that example. You have to kind of finagle your way through what fits in your, power level of your group. But the adherence to what the lore is and how that might manifest as a mechanical number crunching thing is just super well done. And there's some really neat flavor in a lot of these things. I'll go over just a couple. The Hat is the very first one. The protagonist of one of the greatest Baltic epic poems is the hero known as the Bear Terror, who gave the poem its nature. He journeys through many lands, falling in love, protecting his people, battling many-headed monsters, Christian missionaries, and finally the Black Knight, whereupon he meets his end in a heroic struggle. His great strength came from his mother, who was a she-bear. When you look at what it does, the hat, it's legendary, requires attunement, provides the wearer with the strength and constitution of a brown bear. An immediate link. Right? It's the story of that, and that's what it does. Your strength score is now 19 and your con is 16 while you wear the hat. Additionally, once per day, you can choose to deal an additional 4d10 on a melee weapon attack. That's the actual story about sort of where this came from. I did not know about this thing. And the fact that I can go elsewhere and find more info is really cool. It also gives me the other aspect of content beyond the inspiration, which is the plug and play. It's something I can bring to my table right now. There is a guy from a region that seems familiar to the lore and history of Baltic history and culture. And that guy wears a hat. You kill him, you loot that hat. This is what it does. It just sort of fits. There is a cauldron in here. You might think, oh, throw some food, make something equivalent to Goodberry. No. This is a cauldron. And here's kind of the back way of going about it. Sort of the reverse angle. There's a cauldron that if you put the dead inside of it, it resurrects them. That's the mechanical bits, right? There's little details on resurrection and what sort of magic, how many charges, if any, and things like this. The fact that there's something in ancient history or in lore or mythology that talks about that happening inspires me and makes me excited to close this out in the video and learn more about that cauldron. Like, what the hell really happened? Those sorts of things. There's an axe. It's magic, +1. Extra damage, all this other stuff, right? A lot of axes are like that. But you can smash that axe into like a door frame, a door jamb. And by doing so and leaving it there, it makes undead and fiends and whatnot, kind of the stuff that registers on the paladins, what I call high beams, they can't pass through that portal. They can't pass it. That's really cool story and flavor there, right? If you look into the lore and the story of that, that's exciting and neat to talk through. But mechanically, not only is it a magical axe, the implications and the effect and the usage of that, when you're doing a long rest, you've got it covered. You don't need to necessarily have as many guards or surround the camp with caltrops and all this other stuff. Just slam that into a doorway and they're not crossing. That's a cool thing to have on your axe. So that's the type of stuff you get. Yes, it's a weapon. There's weapons in the DMG and many other books. But you're getting things that kind of go off the beaten path and give you some new and unique stuff because it's adhering to the story behind it, which is oftentimes when you read like Baba Yaga and things like this, that stuff is so far out there. It's awesome. It's kind of like how I see Miyazaki's movies for those that are into those animated movies, right? His vision and the mind of what's out there is so unique and so interesting that I want to Google it and look more into that. That's the type of stuff you get here. It is still quantified. It is still given the treatment of, okay, what kind of rarity is this? What power level should a PC be? What level should they be before they acquire this? What does it do mechanically? It does a good job of meshing the two together. And to do that for 130 items, I mean, you can do the math on your own. 130 items that have inspiration while also having plug and play things that can get you through a session and put onto your table. 130 of them for $13. Well worth your purchase. Thank you so much for sending this to me. I think that's it. I'm excited and I need to read about some of this stuff. So go out there and get it. This is, what is it? Artifacts of the Old World. a collection of artifacts inspired by European folklore for 5th edition D&D. Link will be in the description. Download it and get it now on DM's Guild for $12.95. That's all I have for you folks. Thanks everyone, and take care.